So let's talk about approaches to teaching organic chemistry, because you're going to find that depending on who you have for organic, you may cover material in a different order, in a different fashion. Now, this is just kind of by the nature of organic chemistry. I talked about in an earlier video the three major components of organic chemistry: the stereochemistry, the mechanisms, and the naming. Well, you kind of have to do all three, so you have to pick a starting point and go. Now, the two major approaches you see taught are, one, do all the naming and then come back and cover the reactions. And the idea with this is that as you start going along with the mechanisms, there's no need to go back and say, oh, by the way, this is what this is what this is. It kind of prevents some backtracking. The major disadvantage of this is that if you teach all the naming and all the functional groups at once, you have that retroactive memory loss. It's hard to remember why you learned alcohols because you just learned how to name them and their physical properties, and that was it, and you come back to the mechanisms. Other method approach is to teach them side by side. So we introduce alcohols, teach all the reactions, introduce aldehydes, teach all the reactions. The advantage of this is that it tends to frame the relevance of the functional groups better. The downside of this is that it sometimes leads to having to basically do a crash course on something. So I may talk about a reaction where we convert an alcohol to an aldehyde. Well, you may not know what an aldehyde is yet, so I have to kind of give you the short summary, and that kind of gives you a disadvantage when you start talking about aldehydes, because you've got the short summary that's kind of biasing your understanding. So my personal approach is the latter. I like to teach the functional groups, and then I like to teach the reactions relevant to the functional groups. This will create a lot of backtracking, but this is why this video series exists, is that it's meant to give you the option of doing it either way. There should be a whole video series on just the naming and the stereochemistry of a particular functional group, and then a whole video series on the reactions. And if you're confused about it, you should be able to go to those other videos and reference the information that you're kind of missing. So this is my philosophy on teaching organic, is the way I was taught organic. It's kind of a bias there, but I think it works really well. Other instructors may do it different ways. They're not wrong. It was probably the way they were taught, and it's what works best for them.